Hello YouTube, welcome back to Kind Heart Homestead. We have a bit of a different type of video for you this week. Now that the holidays are approaching, we're more focused on family time, staying warm, and having good food than we are maintaining the homestead and trying to prepare for the growing season. So we're actually going to decorate some pine cones with edible materials for our wildlife neighbors to eat. We're going to go through our pantry, just pull out things that we probably don't need, maybe some excess peanut butter, raisins, and things like that. So if you want to see what we do, stick around. I'll be right back. Cedar is absolutely in love with tiny pumpkins. He picked these ones from our garden. We grew these ornamental pumpkins, and he keeps them in his wagon, and anytime he's outside, he wants his wagon full of pumpkins with him everywhere he goes. So he pulls it around. Sometimes he dumps them out, but then he has to put them back in and get going. So Angie kicked off this project when we were down in South Carolina for Halloween. Instead of giving Cedar the sugary candy, we came home with some pine cones from the neighborhood. And we chose ones that were open enough to shove the goodies down inside. And we also tried to salvage the ones that were a bit less prickly. Growing up in the South, I know how prickly they can be. So I was determined to kind of put my hands on each one just to make sure they wouldn't be too dangerous for our toddler, Cedar. So you can see we started by shoving as much peanut butter as possible into the pine cone. I'm trying to get them inside there, so when we shove stuff in, like big chunks of popcorn and things like that, there's enough adhesive in there to hold things together. We also have some leftover baby food flakes. I believe this is some sort of oats or grains. I'm using that kind of as like a snow topping to top off the finished product of the pine cone. Cedar loves popcorn. We told him not to eat these ones, but these are popcorn kernels that we grew a couple years ago at our last homestead around Raleigh, North Carolina. We've been keeping these with us as we move because sometimes we like a nice little savory treat. I like to just toss these in salt when I eat them, but I've been having issues with carbohydrates lately. I'm trying to change my diet a bit, which means I can't eat the popcorn. So this is one thing nice we can do. I wanted to string up popcorn strings for the birds, but we don't have a sewing kit or any sort of needles, at least anything that Cedar would be able to handle without injury. So this is the next best thing. Pine cones are already natural, so we're not going to have to collect string or anything like that. These will just compost in the woods. Even though they're not from here, they shouldn't make much of an impact. The wildlife, as they collect their nutrients and food for the winter, maybe in anticipation of some sort of hibernation or burrowing, they're probably going to need this energy. So we're going to give them the popcorn, the peanut butter. We're also going to put the raisins and those flaky oats on here as well. Cedar seems pretty engaged with this. We got out his little toddler stool that we use to allow him to reach the sink to brush his teeth, wash his hands, or help us with the dishes. It kind of keeps him contained, and as long as we don't put it on too uneven ground, it's not really a hazard. It's not going to fall over as long as we're nearby. But this allows him to be above the project and looking down, feeling a bit bigger. So I think it boosts his confidence a bit as we help him with this project. If you have a toddler on your homestead, please let us know down in the comments what kind of tasks and projects you let him or her help you with. And as they get older, what kind of chores do you allow them to take the reins on? Ready, Cedar? It's snowing! We're heading up to the woods now. I have my wildlife camera. I'm going to use it to see what kind of creatures and critters eat these pine cones and popcorn. We don't have a lot of pine trees up on our mountain, but the few that we have are mostly pretty small. So we located a couple just off our old logging road up in the woods of our property. So we'd have a place to monitor the pine cones and see them on our daily walks. I also set up the trail cam just across the logging road with a perfect view of the pine tree. In a minute or so, I'll show you some of the wildlife that came to inspect the pine cones. But for now, you can take a look at our placement of the pine cones on this pine tree. You can see we put 3 at the branch clusters close to the trunk. And then the 4th one, I actually put dangling off the edge of a branch. That way, birds could potentially get this and not so much the other animals. So we'll just have to see how well the animals can actually get to these pine cones and what types of animals we actually see. Keeping in step with the sustainability theme of this project, we're scattering all that's left of our project on the ground near the pine cones for the animals to enjoy. So that's basically the extra popcorn, any raisins that have fallen off the pine cone, and the rest of that baby food in powdered form that we had on a plate that acted as kind of a snow topping for the pine cones. We caught some recordings of deer in the area. There was a few does that came by at night, but there's also this buck that was brave enough to visit during the day. I don't think the deer are actually interested in the pine cones. We just got lucky with the footage. But someone who is interested in the pine cone is this raccoon. We have a few different recordings of him. He climbed up the trunk to get at those trunk-based pine cones, but he was really interested in the dangling one the most. Another visitor that came by is a neighboring cow. Somehow this cow is able to get out of its fence and it walks through our property. And I don't really know the owners or the name of this cow, but I do know that our dog Maria tends to start a little bit, and I think that's why the cow is a bit afraid in this shot here. Not afraid of me, but it does want to get away from Maria. Okay, Cedar, here's your first pile of leaves. Mama's going to put you in it, okay? Here he goes. I feel like this video was more like a home movie than an educational production. And I don't really mind that, but I'm not really sure what the demand is like for that type of video. So if you're a homesteader or an off-gridder or someone who just enjoys sustainable projects, let us know down in the comments if you'd like to see more toddler-related sustainable projects, such as gardening, or just decorating more natural resources like pine cones and sticks and things like that. Stick around just for a minute if you want to see some more of our fall home videos. Otherwise, we'll see you back here next time in Kind Heart Homestead. Thanks for watching.
Good to go? You just gave him a thumbs up.
Okay. We're on the hayride. We're going on a hayride.